Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for continuing to support my channel. So it is the last day of the month, and that means I am going to do a wrap up for the month of January, and I'm very excited to go over everything about the channel, all the books that I've read, a lot of stats for the channel, but first, as always, we're going to start with a little bit of a channel update. So the YouTube channel itself hit a milestone yesterday. It got to 7,000 total subs, so that was awesome. Very excited about that. Every time it's 1,000, I always pay attention to that, so very excited. The Discord channel, and the Discord is really fun. I'm so glad. I don't know why I held off doing that for so long. It's a great way to kind of get the community together. So if you haven't joined that, join. I'm always talking to people. A lot of activity going there, and that is now up to above 300 people. The Patreon account keeps on growing too. That was at 11 last month, and now it's at 16. So very appreciative of everybody that has contributed there, and it's fun finding these new books to read through the Patreon account by people, putting books into the book raffle and voting on different books for me to read. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mentioned last month that I was starting a new job, but this is the month where I really started, getting down to it, and it's been awesome. I am now working way closer to home, which is awesome. I used to have a 45-minute commute both ways, and that's not horrible. I love listening to audiobooks, but now my commute is still 45 minutes one day a week, but 4 days a week, it's only 20 minutes away. And we're moving offices to my same city, so it's going to be like a 10-minute commute for 4 days of the week, and that's awesome. Get to spend a lot more time with my family, and I always enjoy that, and always be able to drop the kids off at school. I still kind of did that before, but now I can kind of consistently make sure that I always get that done, and I get home a little bit earlier. So that's awesome. Did my first live stream this past weekend. It was kind of impromptu, and by kind of, I mean it was incredibly impromptu. I had no intention of doing it, but I had some free time. The family was doing something in the other room, and I said, let me just pop on for an hour and do it. So I didn't do that thing that everybody should do, where they say when it's going to start. So I just kind of did it, but it was great. A lot more people watched it than I thought. There were kind of consistently like 50 or so people watching it, and as I look back, it's got well over 1,000 people have watched it after the fact. So that was a lot of fun. I'll try to do them in the future. It's just really hard for me to do live streams because I live on the West Coast and I have a family that no offense, I like spending time with them more than I like spending time with you. I love spending time with you. Just you're not quite there. And so the time that I have free to do videos like this, like right now, it's the night before this video came out, and it's like 10 o'clock p.m., which is pretty late for everywhere else in the world except for like Hawaii. And so it's tough. Every now and then I might have time. It would really only be on weekends, but we'll see. It was a lot of fun though. A lot more activity in there than I thought. And the other update I would give, something that I was excited about, is there was a Reddit thread talking about, there was like one of the biggest threads on the fantasy subreddit that was talking about who your favorite booktuber was, and my name was like really close to the top, which was great for bringing viewers to the channel. So I had, the best day I've ever had for subscribers to my channel was like 120. And I forgot what video it was that I released, but it totally got in the algorithm, and it was like a huge jump from one day. But this one brought like about 200 people. I think one day it had 250. So it probably brought like 500 total new subscribers to the channel, which is crazy. So yeah, I've never had growth like that before. So that's pretty fun. So that's all the updates I have for you. So now let us move into the channel stats. And a lot of times I like to compare these stats to the previous month and like average them out throughout the year, but it's the first month, so I have nothing to average it to. And so it's going to be a little bit shorter. But I read 7 books this month. I read 4,800 pages, which is up 600 from the previous month. So 4,800, that's quite a bit. The views this month were at 75,000 on the YouTube channel, and that's up from 40,000, so huge jump there. The hours watched this month was about 10,000, and that was up from 6,000. And the subscriptions I got this month was 1,200, and that was up from 425. So great month for the channel. My number 1 video this month got 15,000 views and growing, and that was my full breakdown of Malazan. That one's still in the algorithm a little bit, so That one's climbing. It's going to end up being one of my best all-time videos, up there with like the top 5. My number 2 best was about 7,000 views, and that was a tier list, my updated tier list of all the fantasy series that I've read. And my 3rd most watched has about 6,000 views, and that was me ranking the 117 books that I read in 2022, where I spent about 30 seconds doing each one. And that was a lot of fun to make. You can see it right over there or click right up here to go directly to it. But yeah, I had a 30-second time limit for how long I could talk about each book, and I held myself to it. So it kind of drove me crazy because, as you know, I kind of ramble, and talking for 30 seconds on a book ain't my style. But it was a lot of fun. So let's go to the how many books did I read? 7? The 7 books that I read this month. And the first was Secret Project number 1. And I'm going to say the book. So if you don't want spoilers on Secret Project number 1, don't watch this for a second. Wait until you see another picture over there for the next book. But it is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. As I mentioned, this was the first of the special projects, and I projected that I would give this a 3 out of 5, and I actually gave it a 5 out of 5. So this was my most surprisingly good book that I read this month. I predicted that I'd finish it on January 3rd, and I finished it on January 4th. And I predicted that I wouldn't love this book because, for a lot of reasons, but the shorter the Sanderson books are, the less I like them, it seems like. And this was a short book, and I haven't loved a lot of the Cosmere tie-ins to some of these books. I keep wanting to get back to Stormlight, or the Mistborn books that I loved, which was the first era. And so, it's been a little while since I've had a Sanderson book that I've really loved. It's been since Rhythm of War. And I love this one so much. It was such a great book. I shouldn't have liked it as much as I did, but it had such a whimsical tone to it. This kind of like fairy tale type story. It featured everybody on boats. I love boats in my fantasy books. And it was just a great tale. It had a great twist to it that I didn't see coming, but I should have. Great character growth, amazing magic system. I just don't understand how Sanderson has all these different magic systems up in his brain. I mean, you have these authors that are trying so hard to come up with something unique once, and he's busting these things out by the dozen, And so, yeah, bravo to Sanderson. You knocked it out of the park, and my optimism for Secret Project number 2 is now way higher. So thank you, Brando Sando. So the second book I read was The Bone Ship's Wake. This is part of the Tidechild trilogy, and this is by R.J. Barker, and I predicted a 5 out of 5, and I did give it a 5 out of 5. I also predicted that I finish it on the 7th, and I finished it on the 8th. And yeah, this is great. It was not as good as the second book in the trilogy, but that's totally fine because the second book is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. And so, but I love this third book. It was a great ending. I had some problems with it. You'd have to watch the review to really find out what those were. But yeah, great ending to this trilogy. I love like pirate stories. And, I don't know if you could say this is like inherently pirates, although they do kind of act like pirates. But you have all those main pirate themes to this book. The writing's incredible. I love the way R.J. Barker writes. I don't know if he writes all his series like this. I'll find out soon because I can't wait to read more. I do plan on reading Barker's first series, something Assassin, like Age of Assassins maybe. And then he has a new book coming out this year that I'm also very excited about reading. I forget the name of it right now. It's got a very interesting name. But yeah, I can't wait to read more R.J. Barker, and I cannot praise the Tidechild trilogy more. I gave each book a 5 out of 5. It's one of my favorite all-time trilogies, and you must check it out. Then I read Dead Man's Walk. This is from the Lonesome Dove series by Larry McMurtry. I predicted a 4 out of 4, and I did give it a 4 out of 4. I also predicted I'd finish it on the 8th, and I finished it on the 9th. So a day behind on all of these, but sue me. But yeah, I like this book. It was a tale of two halves, though, because the first half of the book is one of the best halves to a book that I've ever read. I thought it was even better than the first half of Lonesome Dove, the first book, and I came out and said that Lonesome Dove was my second favorite book that I've ever read. So that tells you how much I loved the first half of this book. The second half, though, was not good. I'd probably say the second half was like a 2 out of 5. I just did not enjoy it. Maybe a 3 out of 5, but it was tough. And I had a lot of problems with it. And, I generally have a lot of problems with prequel stories, which is what this is. I had some problems with the sequel story. I had now a problem with the prequel story. And the last book in the series is the second prequel story book. And I do have a lot of hopes for it, though. I'll probably predict that I give it a 4, but we'll see. But I am excited about it. So then I read The Dragonbone Chair. This is part of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams. And I predicted a 5 out of 5. And I gave it a 1 out of 5. I did not finish the book. And I predicted I'd finish it on the 16th. And because I jumped out early, I finished it on the 13th. And so obviously this is my most disappointing book of the month. And I'm really frustrated that I didn't like this book. I come down to, like, it's maybe like a me thing. It's maybe, I'm having a lot of problems with these older books. I feel like this book was written in like the 80s. It reads like that. And I don't want to come off like, modern books are so much better than older books. But I am saying that lately. As I read Lord of the Rings, I have criticisms with it. I criticize Lord of the Rings because I think that, I appreciate it for what it was, but I still think things are better than it now. And apparently that's a really controversial opinion. I like it. Somebody in the comments recently, likened my opinion on these to saying, like, somebody claiming that, Super Mario 64 is the best video game of all time. Well, it may be one of the most important video games of all time, but have books gotten better than it? Yeah. Or games. And I feel like that here. Like, maybe Dragonbone Chair was super influential, but man, it doesn't hold a candle to a lot more modern fantasy books. It is so slow. I like slow in my books, not like this. There was only one moment in like the 500 pages that I read that had any sort of tension to it. I am told that things kind of ramp up and it gets better, but there are these long moments and it just isn't for me. I feel like if I read this book when it came out, I probably would have loved it. But things have evolved, and the fact that I've read those evolved versions first makes it really hard for me to enjoy this. And I'm very frustrated, and so I'm not going to be reading any more Tad Williams. Maybe I'll give it a chance, maybe I'll come back and do it, but not anytime soon. Then I read His Majesty's Dragon. This is part of Temeraire. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but this is by Naomi Novik, and I predicted a 3 out of 3, and I nailed it. It was a 3 out of 3 for me. I also predicted that I'd finish it on the 20th, and I finished it on the 16th. And I didn't think I'd love this book, and I didn't. I liked it. And I actually might continue on with the series, only because these books are really short. It was a nice little palate cleanser. The book is kind of, it's about, what if the Napoleonic Wars had dragons? It's kind of that thought experiment. The writing's not incredible, but it is a fun little concept. It just, when I came down to it and I talked about it in my review, my biggest problem with this book wasn't so much the plot. It was the progression of the plot. And so it didn't, it had these really nice, cool moments, but it didn't have any bad moments. It didn't, I need my characters to have struggles so that when they come out on top and when things go well, that you can compare those things, and I didn't get any of that. And so maybe the other books will do more. I have heard that the other books in the series kind of investigate other parts of the planet. I'm very interested in seeing, this general thought of like dragons in a historical time period is a cool one to me. So I'll keep giving it a shot. We'll see. Then I read the first binding. This is part of Tales of Tremaine. This is by R.R. Virdi, and I predicted a 3 out of 5, and I gave it a 0 out of 5. I've never given a 0. Are you even allowed to give zeros? I did. I'll do it if I want. It's my channel. And I predicted I'd finish it on the 28th, and I finished it on the 19th. So I was way ahead of schedule this month. And oh man, I hated this book. I predicted, I had this book is like, really excited about it. I had it as like a 5 out of 5 prediction. And then Ben over at Books with Genghis Khan, who I seemingly agree with more than anybody. We don't agree on everything, but mostly agree on things. He trashed it. And I was like, uh-oh. So I downgraded my prediction to a 3 out of 5, and I read it, and it was way worse than I thought it'd be. Not only did I hate everything about it, which I did. It's stolen. It is The Name of the Wind, with some character changes. Okay, not like who's in the book as far as like who they are as a person, but the names of them. That's basically the only thing that changed here. It's a really bad Name of the Wind that is a hard ripoff. I've heard people use this term ripoff to describe things. I've heard that the first book in the Wheel of Time is a ripoff of Lord of the Rings. Yeah, not like this. That first book in the Wheel of Time borrowed a lot of things. It copied a lot of the same style, and then it went off and did its own thing. It had a lot of similarities, but it is very different. If you looked at a Venn diagram, there is a middle section where they overlap. Yeah, if you looked at the Venn diagram between the first binding and The Name of the Wind, it looks like this. It is a horrific massacre of theft. That's all I can say. So, yeah, nobody give this author money. They don't deserve it. And then I read Babel. This is by R.F. Kuang. I did not predict anything on this book because I didn't think I'd get to it, but I read things. I exited out the Dragonbone chair early. It gave me time to fit in another book. But I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5, and I finished it on the 27th. And yeah, it was a good book. Not amazing. It was entertaining. I liked it. I had some problems with it. I thought it was a little heavy-handed with its themes. I thought that the side characters weren't developed in an amazing way. I thought the ending had some struggles, but I was very captivated in the story. I liked the school setting. I liked this idea that these translators were looking in the history of words, kind of had this history book aspect to it. I like history books. So I did like this book, and I would recommend it to people. But I don't think it's as good as most people say. Most people said it's like, mind-blowing, and I couldn't say that, but it was good. So my predicted scores this past month were 3.8. And if you remember back to my last video, I said that I'm going to downgrade my opinions on some of these because I'm always too optimistic. But apparently I didn't downgrade it enough because my overall score this month was a 3.1. So I got to get that score up. I got to get back to a 4 or above next month. And I'm hoping that I will get there. So those are my reviews. And before I sign out here, I did get some book mail. And what I do with book mail is I tell authors that I'm probably not going to read your book, but I will showcase it for everybody because I just don't have time to read all these books people send me. But I did get 2, and I want to share them with you. So the first book that I got is Tribe of the Accord. This is by Sean Michael Stone. Am I saying that right? It is. Very cool cover. Looks intriguing. I like the color palette. It looks nice. So I'm going to read the back. It's very short. All right. Adira knows only life alone in the wilderness with her father, Torion. Surviving the wild is bearable with him. That's until a mysterious clan known as the 𝐒𝐻 abduct him. On the run from the aggressors, she must flee to unfamiliar lands and put her survival skills to the test. Along the way, she forms friendships and joins a tribe in the hope of finding her father. Will she conquer the challenges set before her to become a member of the society and rescue Torion? Or will the terrifying 𝐒𝐻 clan bring doom to them all? Sounds fun. And the next book I got, the last one, is Satan's Glove. This is by cousin Vinny Agnello and Carolyn Ray. And this is part of the Satan series, book 1. This seems like a horror book. I'm not really into horror books, but a lot of people that watch this are. And I'm not going to read this entire back here, but I will read part of it because it's very long. In 1991, Eddie Romano, an undersized, unconfident kid, finds an antique baseball glove while on a treasure hunt of the ruins of an old Comiskey Park in Chicago. Instantly, that glove becomes his obsession. While sleeping at night, he's transported to a dreary, decrepit ballpark where he learns the game of baseball from Billy, a skillful young ball player who seems to be under the control of a dark, sinister figure who calls himself the manager. Yeah, sounds dark. And too scary for me. I gotta go to sleep at night and not worry about freaking out. So that is it for me this month. Let me know what you think about my reviews here, and you'll get another video tomorrow with my TBR for February. So thank you so much, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier patrons, Sky, Russell, Ron Reich, Romeo Mike, and CJ.